Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today's video is a reaction to a video that I recently came across, and it's a poet actress who I've been knowing about for almost since the beginning when I got into Brazil, like in late 99, early 2000. I ran across a series of videos of interviews with a number of, well-known Afro-Brazilians. And I just wanted to focus on this little section of this interview that the actress poet Elisa Lucinda was featured in. And what she said in that little, it's like a minute and a half clip. It speaks volumes because these are the topics that I talk about on Black Brazil Today, both the YouTube channel as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog. You'll understand when I go through what she's talking about, and then, as I always do, I'll put it into context with some articles that I've already featured, either in videos or just on the blog. So today's video, you go into a restaurant where there are only white people and don't notice. It's Brazilian apartheid that we pretend we don't see, says actress, poet Elisa Lucinda. So, I mean, what she is saying there is it's pretty much obvious in the title of the blog article. It's like Brazil doesn't have a history of legalized segregation. I've always pointed that out. It's been like a socially recognized type of segregation and what a lot of people define as apartheid. It's like, no, you're not going to have any sign that says only white people here or black people there. But the expectation in certain areas is that these areas are supposed to be only white. And when black people show up in these areas, the question is like, well, what are you doing here? So again, we're not talking about legal segregation. We're talking about socially accepted segregation. When you go into areas and you realize these upper crusts, whether they're neighborhoods or restaurants or sporting clubs, whatever they might be, and most of the people, if not all of them, are white or what we would consider Brazilian white. It's so normalized in Brazil that no one notices, and then when somebody black shows up, it's like, oh my God, what are they doing here? I'm sure I've had Black Americans talk about this when they've visited plush places in Brazil, whether it be in Rio or Sao Paulo or Salvador Bahia, wherever it might be. Black Americans have spoken on this. Increasingly over the last few decades, Black Brazilians have pointed it out. But it's really big when you get foreigners go there and they notice this. Like I did a video, I guess a couple of months ago. I think the guy was probably of Arabic descent of some sort, but he was in Brazil and he noticed like he had been well traveled, been to a number of countries, and he noticed like in Brazil, you just don't find black people in the upper crust neighborhoods. Like, where are the black people? Now, people will say, well, you have white poverty in favelas, the low income regions in the hills of major cities in Brazil. But that's not the question. The question is, why is it that when you go to upper crust middle class areas, you're going to see very few black or at least non-white people? So anyway, that's the topic of today's video. Before I get into it, definitely like this video, drop a comment in the comment section, share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell. And so with that said, I want to get directly into tonight's video featuring Elisa Lucinda. Let's check it out. So this is actress, poet. I wouldn't say she's a A-list actress, but I think most people know who she is. But as one of the sections of this interview that she mentions, maybe people don't necessarily know her by name. Okay. So when we talk about what's called apartheid brasileiro, we're talking about, again, not legalized segregation, but when you turn on the TV screens and, cinema in Brazil, you see mostly white actors. When you look at Brazil's carnival, obviously there's a different layout for carnival in the Northeast versus what you get in places like Rio and Sao Paulo. But people are talking about the segregation that you'll see in carnival, particularly in Northeastern carnival, where whiter acts, musical acts, will have the larger spotlight. They'll have better time slots on television, their advertisements, the salary that they earn. And this is just one of the many ways that this apartheid plays out in Brazil. I remember that Margarete Menezes, um, she's a popular Afro pop singer from Bahia, and she just talked about how okay, you have her, and then you have a number of white singers who became famous singing what's called Ashe and Afro pop and this type of thing. And it's just like, why do they get all the attention and they get the, larger, payouts? She kept her mouth shut for years about that. But in the last 5 years, Margarite Menezes has spoken a lot about that. So you see this Brazilian apartheid and Carnival, you see the media. For years, we would see Carnival in Salvador Bahia, where you would see the VIP sections with almost exclusively white people. And those people who are, stuck back to back, like a box of popcorn, and they'll be in the audience just, trying to have a good time while they're looking in these VIP areas, and you'll see all of the white people, in the plush areas, enjoying themselves, plenty of space, nice, comfortable, VIP section. It's like, well, why does this happen in a city like Salvador Bahia, where it's like 80% non-white? You go to ritzy restaurants. I remember reading an article about this black Brazilian guy, and he spoke on going into a particular restaurant. I think he was in Rio de Janeiro, and he said, everybody in the restaurant just like stopped and looked at him and his black wife or girlfriend. And that's the other thing. It's like, if you're moving up in society, the black man is expected to have a white woman. But he walked in there with his black girlfriend, and it was just like everybody was kind of like stunned. Like, not only is like, what is the black guy doing here, but a black guy and a black woman? You look in politics where you see very little black representation in Brazilian politics. So this is an unofficial apartheid, but it is there. All you got to do is look. As I said, when you go into certain regions of large cities, it's expected that it's only going to be white people there. And when black people show up, it's kind of a look like, what are these blacks doing here? It's like they have a certain discomfort with black presence. I mean, okay, this is what I'm saying. But all of my content, of course, I'm going to share my opinion on it, but my content is because of what Brazilians and specifically black Brazilians are saying. I'm just sharing the content with an English speaking market. So what I want to do right here now is just overdub what Elisa Lucinda had to say. She goes into this for it's a longer interview, but just the minute and 27 seconds is what I want to focus on. So right now, I'm going to just overdub what she had to say. My immense wish is that a large part of the population that isn't black realizes this. Because what's happened is that we black people are used to seeing white people. So we see white people, we're used to watching them, seeing them, because society's focus is all on them in the media. But it's not a two-way street. So much so that they get confused. They mistake me for Margarete Menezes with Zezé Malta. They confuse Djavan with Milton Nascimento. People will know it as if it were a carnival group, So you go into a restaurant where there are only white people and you don't notice it. You're good people. And I know a lot of left-wing people who go into a restaurant where there are only white people and they don't notice it. That something is wrong. If there's territoriality, there's apartheid. If I know where to find black people and where to find white people, there's effing apartheid. We keep pretending we don't see it, but it's because we really don't see it. There's a blindness. So you heard what Elisa Lucinda had to say. Brazilian society is accustomed to being in areas where they only expect white people to be in a certain area. And again, the surprise when black people show up is like, what are these black people doing here? So then this is what I said earlier in the video, like people know her face, but they tend to confuse black people who are in the media. So they'll confuse Elisa Lucinda here with Margarete Menezes, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, the singer. I think she's like the Minister of Culture in the Lula administration now, President Lula. And then longtime actress Zezé Malta. Zezé Malta, I think she just turned 80 years old. She's been in the media for a long time. You would think people would know her by name and not mix her up with somebody else. I mean, in reality, these three black women look nothing alike. Then you have two other well-known, popular, very much well-loved musicians. This is Gigi Van and this is Milton Nascimento. Both of these photos are a little bit older. You know, both of these guys. I think Milton Nascimento must be about 82 now. He just had a birthday last month. He recently spoke about the passing of Quincy Jones because him and Quincy Jones are very good friends. And Gigi Van, I think, is probably 74, 75 now. So these are older pictures. But what my point is, you know, both of them were known or are known for wearing braids. Of course, Milton Nascimento has shaved his head now, but the only thing I can see is that they're both black guys who have worn braids, and people mix up Gigi Van with Milton Nascimento. So that's what the point that Elisa Lucinda is talking about. It's an unofficial apartheid, and nobody seems to want to recognize it. But as I've said in the last few decades, Black Brazilians have been calling this out. It's like, how can you not call it out? But who is Elisa Lucinda? Elisa Lucinda is a Brazilian multi-artist, actress, singer, writer, and poet. She's an important figure on the Brazilian cultural scene. She was born in Cariacica, Espírito Santo, which is in the southeast of the country, on February 2nd, 1958. Elisa Lucinda Campos Gomes had family support and encouragement to exercise her creativity. Her family was middle class, and her father was a Portuguese teacher, which led her to becoming interested in poetry as a child and taking poetry recitation classes at the age of 10. She graduated as a journalist from the Federal University of Espírito Santo and worked as a journalist in the 1980s. In 1986, Elisa Lucinda decided to move to Rio de Janeiro in search of a career change. She became an actress and worked in plays, films, soap operas, and miniseries. Elisa performed as an actress for the first time on television in 1989 in the soap opera Cananga do Japão on the Rede Manchete network. I think that's an extinct, defunct television network. She then did two more soap operas on the network and then moved on to the SBT television network. Later in the 1990s, she moved on to Brazil's top television network, Rede Globo, where she made her debut on the program Você Decide. She did a lot of work at Globo, especially in soap operas written by popular novella writer Manuel Carlos. As well as being an actress, Elisa was intensely involved in writing, especially poetry. Her first book was published independently in 1992 and was entitled Lua que Menstrua. In 1995, she published O Semelhante. It was a book of poems and gave rise to the play of the same name. Since then, she has published more than 10 literary works. Elisa Lucinda is also a singer and has collaborated with important names in Brazilian music. In 2021, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her work on O Pai de Rita at the Rio Film Festival. A year earlier in 2020, she was also nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Gramado Festival, which she received the Special Judges Prize for her body of work. Elisa has also played an important role in social educational field. At the end of the 1990s, she created Casa Poema, an organization that does significant work empowering people through poetry. The actress lives in Rio de Janeiro, the city she has chosen to live in since the mid-1980s. She's a follower of the Candomblé religion, of course, the Afro-Brazilian religion. A whole lot I could tell you about that. People who follow Afro-Brazilian religions tend to be persecuted, you know, where they in their houses of worship. She was married to psychoanalyst Zanandre Abbassini from 1981 to 1984, with whom she had a son, Juliano, and then to psychiatrist Jose Ignacio Tavares Xavier from 1993 to 2004. Throughout her career, Lucinda has appeared in 20 novellas or series and 21 films. She's, you know, Elisa Lucinda from time to time just periodically pops up and she just makes statements on Brazilian society that just makes you think about these things. So considering what she said, putting in what she said in a context, I did a video. I don't know if it was a couple months back now, it was about a month ago. And the question is, why can't a Black couple get married there? Prominent couple married at the lavish Copacabana Hotel in Rio. The first wedding of Black excellence at the Copacabana Palace. Bárbara Brito and Levis Novaes get married in Black wedding at a historic, luxurious hotel. And the point here is that Black people are not expected to have events in a plush place like the Copacabana Palace. This is exactly what Elisa Lucinda is talking about. Like, why can't Black people get married at a place like this? This is Margarete Menezes. I talked about her in a minute. She talks about racism in Ashe music and the intolerance of Afro-Brazilian religions like the Candomblé, which I was just talking about. Menezes just pointed this out. Like, you know, she's been a big name in Bahian music, Bahia being the state, what they consider the center of African culture in Brazil. She's been, out since the late 80s, early 90s. But yet there are certain white singers who get much more spotlight and make more money than she does. And she's asking, why is that? And it's kind of obvious as to why that's true. Let's see what else we have here. Surprise, surprise. Brazil's top TV network presents the country as nearly all white in the World Cup commercial. Of course, Brazil hosted the World Cup in 2014, but uh, the cameras would show Brazil in its TV commercials as if it was a white country in the tropics. Again, this is what Elisa Lucinda is talking about. If Brazil is so proud of its mixed race population, why do you present the country as totally white in the media? Okay, it's a contradiction. 2014 TV series completely whitens ancient Egypt. Cast features 40 actors, all white. And this is the ongoing conversation. I've recently had a few videos where I talked about this. Obviously, if we're talking about modern day Egypt, you're going to have people, Arabic people. But when you go back in the dynasties in Egypt, the people did not look like this. And Brazil is contributing to this image of a white ancient Egypt. Even if you say some of the actors and actresses may not be like white, again, this is going to come up in another video that I'm going to do, because these are like Brazilians have, a large percentage of the Brazilian population that considers itself white is actually they're light skinned mestizos. They're actually mixed people who just happen to look a little whiter, but you can look at them and just see that they're not completely white. I'm going to talk about that in another upcoming video. So then we talk about segregation in Brazil. Again, Brazil doesn't have legalized, and as far as I've seen in my own research, it's never had legalized segregation, but Brazil is very segregated even without having the laws. Racial democracy or informal apartheid. South Africa and Brazil, two historical cultural contexts and different times, the same segregation. You got buses that come down from the favelas, with a bunch of black kids on the bus who want to go enjoy themselves on the Copacabana beach. And the military police in Rio stops the bus, rounds up a group of black teenagers headed for Copacabana Beach. There's numerous examples we could go through of what we call segregation Brazilian style. In 2014, some headlines were about the so-called rolezinhos, where black and brown kids would go to upper crust malls wanting to hang out and just be in the mall. Brazilian apartheid rears its ugly head again. Military police screen and harass black youth from entering an upper crust shopping mall. I've talked a lot about this. This made big headlines for probably a couple of months in 2014. Like, how come these teens can't just go to a mall and enjoy themselves like anybody else can without being rounded up by the police, chased out of the police, by the police, harassed? That was a big story in 2014. Carnival season begins with accusations of apartheid against black Bloco Afro groups in Salvador. This is what I spoke about in a few minutes ago. The primarily black Bloco Afros, it's like black, Carnival groups, and they were complaining about the routes throughout the cities during Carnival, and they wouldn't get the spotlight on television. They would have the progressions that were not as popular as the routes of the other groups, the mainly white groups. And then you talk about the segregation in the audience of where fans can sit and watch this show. You're either going to be bunched up with tens of thousands of people out in the street, or you're going to be in these floats where people sit comfortably in a VIP section, and those people are generally white or something close to white. Now, Brazil's beaches, particularly in Rio, are some of the places of the worst segregation that you're going to find, because the attitude is that residents in the ritzy neighborhoods that have the nice beaches don't want poor blacks there dirtying up the beaches, they say. So you'll frequently see police rounding up black and brown teenagers hanging out on the beach. I mean, does this look like a place how would you like to be getting chased down like this? Apartheid Brazilian style on some of the best beaches. Okay. Outlining for death, white, black areas and redlining of Brazilian cities. When you go to certain Brazilian cities, you'll notice how it can be side by side. You'll have like upper crust, middle class apartments, and then right like across the street, you'll have these huge favelas where, it's obviously it's the poor communities. I was scrolling through some of these pictures and I realized that I have to not show these because It could be flagged by YouTube, so I'm not going to show some of these pictures. Some of this stuff, maybe I'll just link in the description box so you can see them for yourselves. This is the story of a 51-year-old musician, Evaldo Rosa dos Santos. He was murdered after the Brazilian army riddled his car with 80 shots. If you go to the blog and check out these stories, because like I said, YouTube definitely has censorship here. So there's certain stuff that I'm just not going to show here. Be on the lookout. 2 Negroes spotted walking on the beach. Facebook post by residents of Rio's richest neighborhood again displays racist sentiments. So you had 2 black guys walking on the beach, and all of a sudden an alert went out on Facebook like, hey, there's 2 black guys walking around on the beach. Be on the lookout. Okay. Now, this is an article I called Hell de Janeiro. You know, in Brazil, they say Rio de Janeiro. I called it Hell de Janeiro. Residents complain about armed forced stops in the Rocinha favela. Shocking images from Rio slums show daily life under an occupation. Again, I'm not going to show the pictures here because it probably won't get through the YouTube censors, but go to the blog and check out this article. You'll be shocked by the military police presence. You know, it's like the army. You see these huge tanks going through these favelas. You know, it's like clear apartheid. You're not going to do this in middle and upper crust neighborhoods in Rio, but yet you go to favela and you police the residents there in this way. Al Jazeera wants to know, why is Brazilian television so white? It's something that Black Brazilians have been talking about for years, whether you're talking about in mainstream journalism or in the popular novellas or in the cinema. Brazilian cinema is changing a little bit now, but for years you saw behind the cameras as well as front of the cameras, you just saw mostly white Brazilians. Again, this is the apartheid that Elisa Lucinda was talking about in her video. Now, this was a recent article from 2022. Get out. Well, you see the M word there. In Sao Paulo, comedian musician Eddie Jr. leaves his apartment after racist attack. Incident triggers protest in front of apartment. So there was this lady and her son who were just harassing this guy for no apparent reason. I mean, what other reason can we come to except the fact that she didn't like seeing a black guy in her apartment building? I mean, they were seen, you know, provoking him, stalking him outside of his apartment. You know, she's shouting at the guy. They're waiting outside his apartment, her and her son. He's got a knife in his hand. He showed up again with a broken bottle. It's like, why are you guys treating this musician this way? He obviously has the means to live there. So what's the problem? Again, what are Black people doing here? So this was the point of the video today. I just wanted to give it, again, some context that this is how Brazilian society sees race and who belongs where. And when you see Black people that's supposed to be, that appear to be out of their element, which is supposed to be in the poor neighborhoods, there's discomfort and a question of why are they there? So that's why I wanted to present this 1.5 minute piece in the interview featuring actress poet Elisa Lucinda, because this is what she's saying. What did you guys think about today's video? Drop a comment in the comment section, like this video, share this video, you know, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.